Hello everyone, it's Pennywise the Dancing Clown here with the October wrap-up. This is obviously makeup that I would not wear on a normal day, but since it's the week of Halloween, I thought I would dress up for y'all and be Pennywise the Dancing Clown. So this is my reading wrap-up. I read 4 of the 5 books that I've set out to read, but the week is still long, so I still have time to finish my TBR. But I did want to show y'all what I did finish. I did add in some graphic novels and some novellas as well. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read this month was a mood read, and that is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. So the characters in this were very interesting. One of the best parts, Gretchen was our most developed character, and she had a really interesting backstory, but she wasn't our main POV. Our main POV was Abby. I found her to be very relatable, and she was my favorite character throughout the book. I feel like our side characters weren't that developed, and I wish we had more from them, but overall the characters get a 4 out of 5 stars. The atmosphere was my favorite part of the book. As everyone knows, I love the 80s. I just loved the fashion and pop culture references. They were a lot of fun to read. And then this book is set in South Carolina, which is my home state, so it was a lot of fun to read about locations that I'm familiar with. So the atmosphere gets a 5 out of 5, the best part of the book. The writing was nothing special. The plot took a long time to get into. This is a short book, barely over 300 pages, but felt way longer. So it could have been diced down a lot. It just didn't grip me. The writing didn't. So the writing gets a 3 out of 5 stars. So the plot. So the plot is interesting by the description on the back of the book, but actually getting inside the book, not so much. And stated before, this book took a while to get into. There was a lot of build up for the exorcism, and then the exorcism was a few short chapters. So that it's literally in the title of the book. I feel like it needed more time, and I felt like it should have been played out more. So overall, this was a 3.5 out of 5, and will be going in my unhaul. Our next book is a sequel, and that is Waking Gods, Book 2 of the Famous Files by Sylvian Nouvelle. So at first, this book was a little confusing, getting used to who's who. So you probably should read the first and second books closer together. So you never realize how much these characters mean to you, and that just amazes me, because this book is in a file format, so we don't really get a lot. I don't know how to describe it. So it's just amazing how close we get to these characters, and I loved them so much, and I was so worried about them. The characters get a 5 out of 5 and were one of the best parts of this story. As stated before, this is just dialogue in a file format, so we don't get a lot of world building. We get location names, and that's pretty much it. But we had the character Mr. Burns, who is my favorite character, and with him we get a lot of world building on the past about these robots and aliens and whatnot. So the atmosphere gets a 4 out of 5, which I probably should lower it, but I'm just going to leave it at that. The writing, we were kind of just thrown into this. This is like 8 to 10 years after the first book, and that to me is a long time, and not really getting to know where these characters are, and it's the only reason why I'm not giving this book a full 5 star. And the writing was very fast, so that was very easy to read. But I did skim through a lot of the science bits. I did think the genetic parts were very interesting, but some parts just were way over my head, so I just skimmed those paragraphs. So the plot was amazing. Nouvelle is not afraid of what he's writing. He will kill all characters, to let y'all know. So it just tugs at the reader's heartstrings, but I love when the author is not afraid of what they are doing. The plot was just simply amazing. I loved it. The plot twist were so realistic to the story, and just weren't completely thrown out of left field, and I didn't predict any of them. And this was just a constant have to make theories, change theories, and all of that, and the plot was by far the best part, along with the characters getting a 5 star. But overall, I give this a 4.5 because the writing, as I said, I was getting confused a lot. And I will be continuing the series and reading the books closer together, so hopefully I won't have that confusion. I'm reading the next book this month, or coming into November, and this was my favorite book of the month. Then between books, I picked up a graphic novel, and that is Winter's Teeth, Book 1 Vampire the Masquerade. This is coming from a big tabletop role-play game, video game fandom. I had never heard of it, but it is very popular. So if you are a fan of that series, you may want to pick up these graphic novels. I did really enjoy the story, not having any of that prior knowledge to this fandom. But my only complaint is the art would change from volume to volume, but I don't know if the artist changed, just the characters look different, and I didn't really like that. But I did, as I said, I will continue this. I did enjoy it. I don't give star ratings to graphic novels, but I did enjoy my time reading it. And then I read a novella, and with the Sylvia Nouvelle books, I did read his novellas between during my time reading that book. So those were other novellas that I read throughout the month, but this is the physical novella I read, and that is Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This was just weird. The writing was weird and bland. I don't think the plot is as advertised on the back. I think this is more psychological than anything. It's a fun slasher, but it was weird, and I hope that his novels are better than his novellas, because I've heard great things about his novels, and if they're like this, I'm kind of concerned with how people are reviewing their book. Next we have a classic, and that is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. So Pip is our narrator and protagonist, therefore our most developed character. We start with him as a small boy who is poor, abused, and an orphan. We see him develop throughout the novel as he goes after hardship after hardship. Throughout the novel, he comes to terms with his social standings and is very insecure by them. He's a character that the reader will really connect to. I didn't understand why he was so enamored by Estella. I just didn't understand her as a character, but now I think it's symbolism for the life that Pip wanted for himself. He wanted that life of beauty and riches, and I think that can be seen with Estella as a character. The thing that I think is interesting that Dickens does is that his characters, their names are kind of a double meaning. They're a name, and then there's a deeper meaning to it. Like Miss Havisham, who is an iconic character, unforgettable. Yes, very iconic. And so she's a sham. She's not the caring mother that she should be to Estella, and there's just a lot of schemes with her, and she sees Estella and basically everyone in her life as a pawn. And then we have Jo, who's such a pure character, and the reader cannot help but love. I think another round of symbolism that we have is Jo is pure and poor, and that's what he represents, when you have Miss Havisham, who's rich and just represents the scheming and being terrible. But the characters got a 5 out of 5 for me. Now let's talk atmosphere. This is the most atmospheric book that I've read from Dickens, out of all his short stories included. You just are so immersed in the marshland of southeast England, and then you can just feel the fog coming over the sea. And then we go to Miss Havisham's manor, and you can just see her gliding through in her off-white wedding dress. The atmosphere gets a 5 out of 5 stars as well. With the writing as stated with the atmosphere, this book is very immersive and brings the reader right into Victorian England. The beginning was really amazing. Volume 1 is we see Pip's life as a child, as he starts to realize that he wants more for his life and realizes his social system and all of that. Very interesting. Then volume 2, we're in London following Pip as a teenager, just his day-to-day life. Some of these chapters I just felt like were pointless to the story, but maybe it went over my head and there is purpose for them, but I just found these boring. Then volume 3, everything's being revealed. Some of it was predictable, but it was fun to see how it played out with the characters. So the writing got a 4 out of 5. The plot is filled with many themes, symbols, and much, much more. The main theme here is social class. We see the poor like Jo and Biddy, who are just trying to survive, but they really have their values. They know what matters most in this world, and that's not materialistic. It's family and friendship and stuff like that. And then we have those like Pip and Herbert, who are trying to get more out of life. They're spending money feverishly in London, trying to be men of high society. Then we have ones like Pumblechook and Miss Havisham, who just use all of those people around them as pawns in a chess game and don't really care. They just care about themselves and are very selfish. Another theme is realization of what matters most. And we see Pip going through this journey, trying to become a gentleman, trying to win Estella's love, but really he just loses everything in that process. And I think it's really interesting to see him develop as a character with these themes. So Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ning. This is another character-driven novel. And I don't know if I said what I rated the Charles Dickens one, but that was a 3.75 out of 5 star. So this one was one that I did enjoy, and let's get into it. So the characters, this is definitely a character-driven novel. Like Great Expectations, I think one of the main themes here is class and privilege. So our main characters are Elena and Mia. So Elena has her life set out for her. She knows exactly what she wants, a picture perfect American dream, and she hasn't really had any struggle. So then we have Mia, who had a loved one pass while she was way into a confusing pregnancy. She didn't have a good support system behind her. So these characters are very different from each other. The children of both these women both want different lives, and like most of us at that age, but it's just so interesting to see the similarities and differences between all the characters throughout this novel. The characters got a 5 out of 5 stars. So the atmosphere, one of the main plots of this book couldn't have happened if this book took place in the age of cell phones, so like 10 years later. So having that mid to late 90s setting was perfect and got the point that Ning was trying to get across. So the atmosphere gets a 4 out of 5. So the writing, one of my main complaints is that the plot that's advertised here, it took 100 pages to get into that. So I was basically zoning out a lot of those first 100 pages. As I said, this is a character-driven novel, and that first quarter really shows that, as it is basically strictly character development. So it was hard for me to focus because from our main plot, because we would have chapters that were over 30 pages that were flashbacks of 10 to 15 years before the novel took place. So I felt like that took away from our main plot, but it did add character development to the story. So the plot, or the writing, gets a 3 out of 5 stars. But let's move on to the plot now. So this book is one that will leave the reader thinking afterwards. I still don't know where I stand with the custody battle, which is our main plot. This book will really make you think of your morals and what makes a family a family. Is it blood, love, connection? There is so much to think about, and I know that I'm going to be thinking about this book. And so the plot got a 4 out of 5. And so this overall got a 4 out of 5 stars. This is one that I'm definitely going to reread because I think I will have a better understanding going into it a second time. And there's just so much to dissect here. Again, a perfect character-driven novel for character development because it's not long. A lot of character-driven novels are 500 to 800 pages. So to have 336 pages of character development is very interesting, and I do want to annotate it and all that. I don't have Hulu, so I can't watch the series, but I watched the trailer, and it did look good, so I do think if you enjoyed this, you should probably check out the show, and hopefully I will get Hulu one day and we'll be able to watch it. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you would like more of my in-depth thoughts, you can check out the Goodreads links in the pinned comment. I have a review for each of these books if you would like to check those out. And I still have 2 books that I'm going to finish this month, so be sure to add me on Goodreads, which you can from those links, and so you can get updates on my reading throughout the rest of the month and forever. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, comment, rate, and subscribe, and we all float down here. Thumbnail. Happy Halloween!